Welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone, and yes, I am Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, live and around the world on Starcom Radio Network. If you'd like to send us an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X-Zone Radio TV. And you can listen to the X-Zone 724-365 at www.xzoneradiotv.com. How we do it, it's very simple. We have loaded archives of the show over the past, since 2004, that we are letting you listen to with our compliments. It's that simple. We want this information to go worldwide, and it is, thanks to networks just like Starcom Radio Network. Information is power, and we here at the X-Zone want you, the listeners, to have the power. It's that simple. There's no magical formula. There's no conspiracy. There's no cover-up. You, the X-Zone Nation, have the power when you, the X-Zone Nation, have the information. Speaking about information, my guest this hour is Dr. Royce Murcherson. We're going to be talking about remembering Olympus. The idea of other lives and other worlds challenges our belief of our place in the universe. Joining me now is Dr. Murcherson. And Dr. Royce, welcome to the X-Zone.
Well, hi, Rob. How are you doing? And thanks for having me.
Oh, ma'am, it's my great pleasure. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Doctor.
Well, I'm currently a professor of English at Richland College in Dallas, Texas, and I've been teaching for 19 years now. And I really enjoy it. I left corporate America to go back to school, basically, and teach great literature at the time. And then I realized as I was doing my Ph.D. research that there are other wonderful bodies of literature out there other than in the American canon. And that sort of pushed me into, writing Remembering Olympus.
Now, I understand that you hope your memorable, inspiring book will challenge the reader's perception of reality. What do you mean by that, Doctor?
Yeah. Well, what inspired me to write this book is that most of my adult life, I believe that there was sort of like a single order of things, that we're born, we die, hopefully we go to heaven if there's an afterlife, and that's it. And most of my life, I believe that the only control we had over our lives was in what we could do, with our own hands and mind, what we could touch and see and read and understand.
Right.
And then I started my Ph.D., and I decided to do it on a Hindu text called the Bhagavad Gita, which was completely on the other end of the universe with regard to just, the Christianity as we know it. And that sort of opened up new doors for me. And I started reading a lot of Eastern religions and philosophy in my research. And it opened my mind that there were just other options out there, that there wasn't really, or that it doesn't have to be a single order of things, that we just have options. And all the things that I read and I researched and that where my belief systems kind of changed along the way, just kind of all coalesced together. And I said, this is a great message, and I need to get this message out there for everybody else to see, to put some options on the table.
How are your options being accepted by readers, friends, and associates?
I think they're being accepted really well. And, I could give you specific examples of my friends and colleagues.
Please do, Doctor.
But there was, okay. We had like a short, like a literary festival on campus. And I was going to read excerpts from Remembering Olympus. And, my colleagues have been asking me most of the semester, what's your book about? What's your book about? And I said, yes, I can go into all this Eastern, philosophy and religion. Are they really going to get it right away? So I kind of purposefully just kind of held back until we had the literary festival. And I picked specific passages out of the story, but I always preface those passages with, we get up in the morning, we put our clothes on, we go to work, we work our day, we come home, we go to sleep, we get up and we start it all over again. What if there was more to life than that? What if we felt like we had more power over our destiny than just getting up when the alarm clock goes off and doing the best job you could do at that specific job every day? What if we had power that we didn't realize we had? So I prefaced passages from the book with that, and it sort of opened everybody's mind up. It was like, what if? What if we were greater than what we are, who we are? What if we have more abilities and more potential than we do? And so I felt like, their minds were open to a point where they could say, hey, wow, this is a really cool story. What if, when we die or pass away, that's not the end of things? There's another option out there. There's other stories and worlds behind worlds. And so they took it very well. And I'm just optimistic, that the rest of the reading public out there will take it the same way.
Well, in my experience doing this show over 23 years now, Doctor, I have seen such a change in the way society is looking at itself, especially when it comes to the inner consciousness, how we relate to topics that were kind of tabooed before. Near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, what happens to us when we die, reincarnation. More and more people are looking for answers outside of the box, and I think that your book is a wonderful example of this very trend that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you because as you were speaking, I was thinking back to the 1980s, the age of the New Age, the harmonic convergence. Yeah. And at that time, people were having conversations about there's something changing in the universe, and it's like there's this hidden evolution that's going to happen, and our human consciousness is going to change. And there was something going on. I'm sure there was, and I'm very sure I was affected by it. But it kind of died away, like in the 90s, and when the millennium change kind of sort of took a backseat to everything. And then I noticed there was like what you're saying, there's this huge resurgence of interest in it. Now, I could say, hey, X amount of books on in the bookshelves or in Amazon or et cetera flying off the shelves, subjects like reincarnation, things like that. But I'm going to just defer to mass media, and I'm going to defer to the media because the media always does something on demand. They always do everything on demand.
That's true.
And I noticed, and I'm sure you have, like this explosion in television programming that has to do with all things metaphysical and in film. And I said to myself, there's something going on here again. It's almost like minds are being opened once more. And so I'm really feeling very good about it, very good about it.
I have the opportunity, Doctor, every night, Monday through Friday, for 4 hours talking to people like yourself who are saying, something is happening. People want more answers. The established religious philosophies just aren't cutting it anymore because we're no longer sheep. We don't need shepherds. We need to have answers. And I think that this is what is happening. I've spoken to so many people about reincarnation, near-death experience, out-of-body experiences, communication with those who have passed to the other side. And it's just opening up so many eyes. And when the eyes open, the heart opens. And I'm seeing a large resurgence of the love that we saw going back to the 60s with the hippies. God bless them. They were way before their time, but they started the message.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. That's like that predates the 80s, I think, in the New Age, like by 20 years. And so I guess if you do the math, if you move forward from the 80s to the, the millennium, that's another 20 years, but then we're kind of 15 years inside. And I think that, I don't know, I agree with what you're saying, that people want more answers. Otherwise, we wouldn't see it, in the mass media these days. And I've been asked the question, well, who do you think should read Remembering Olympus, or who did you actually write it for? And I always say that I wrote it for people who want to believe that we humans are capable of accomplishing magical things.
Oh,
I love that. Well, when we truly understand ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and our potential. And I wrote it for people who wanted to broaden their understanding of the universe, because I wanted to broaden my
Sure.
understanding of the universe. I wanted to believe it. And then it just hit me through all my research and my experiences that there's something there, and I love it, and I want to tell everybody else about it. And I said, how am I going to do this? And I said, well, I'm going to write it in a good story, being the English teacher that I am. And I'm going to put that message out there and just see if those hungry minds that want some answers, hopefully, I'm not saying that the answer is in the story,
Mm-hmm.
but there are roadmaps and signposts in the story that may get them to where they're going.
I love this paragraph from the information that you sent us. Prophetic in tone, remembering Olympus offers a broader understanding of what is behind the curtains we humans do not remember, and in brackets, but wonder about when memories cannot be explained away, and opens our minds to the possibility that maybe we can create our own reality through the power of our mind, introducing endless possibilities for anyone who has ever wondered if this is all there is to life. That is powerful.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that there are worlds behind worlds, you know.
Yeah.
And I can offer no definitive proof. I don't know anybody who can offer any definitive proof. All that I can say is that walk down that road, and my road was a very simple road. Just be open to the possibility, okay? And when I'm asked about the book, again, you know, what is the book about? What is the book about? Give it to me in one sentence. Sometimes I'll say it's about possibilities. You know, it's about not saying nothing is impossible. It's about saying that, yes, there is life after death, but maybe there's a life after life. Yes, there's a soul. Maybe that soul, you know, doesn't just go sit down and have a good time in heaven and enjoy paradise. Maybe that soul wants to come back down to earth and learn more things over and over again until it perfects itself. And just these messages, you know, those things that these beliefs that I've just kind of, you know, grown with over the years, I just want to push them out there in a good story. And that paragraph that you read back to me, I guess that was as eloquent as I could put it, you know, because there's so much in that little paragraph, and I think you know what I mean.
You know, I was also reading some of the reviews you've received, and this one is from Diane Donovan, the editor of California Book Watch, and this is a quote: "Remembering Olympus is hard to neatly categorize. Part magical adventure, part mystery, and part time slip saga about other lives and other worlds. This straddles the line between several genres, and does so with good balance and finesse. A healthy dose of New Age thinking and an affinity for sagas. Invite self-examination and inspection of belief systems." Is it possible, Doctor, that in today's society, I'm talking about what's going on in the world around us, the continuous fighting between religious factions, and I'm talking about Islam and the rest of the world, is it possible that it's time, that religion has outlived its time?
I think I wouldn't go so far to say religion has outlived its time, because, you know, when you say religion, I think of, okay, what's the definition of religion? I think organized religion.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I think, you know, that's just kind of like an umbrella that covers something more profound like spirituality. So I always want to substitute religion for spirituality. And so if you're talking, when you make that statement, you're thinking you're thinking that religion has, or you're inferring that religion has outlived itself. Maybe it's the system or the doctrine or the mindset behind a specific religion that it has to be a certain way or you're out, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to push push the definition aside, that particular definition, and just think of it as world spirituality. And I would say spirituality definitely hasn't outlived its time, because spirituality to me encompasses many different religions, if we want to use that term. And that had the greatest effect on me,
right,
in my belief system, and why I wrote the book, because I was looking at several different religions: Western Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Islam, everything. And the first thing that jumped out at me was that there was always a common thread that ran through every religion. So, that cliche, the devil's in the details?
Yep.
Maybe the details is like when a portion of the planet grabs a piece of what they think is their spirituality and starts putting all these do's and don'ts on it, if you know what I mean.
It seems
kind of, you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do, Doctor. It seems that the established religions have people looking outside of themselves for answers, whereas New Age spirituality has the person looking inside for the answers, inside themselves for the answers.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And again, that was part of my personal journey, because I didn't have, I'm going to go back to the 80s. I didn't have a personal guru. I didn't have a personal teacher. It was just my own need to understand and go within myself. You're absolutely right. And the only way that I could do that, because I didn't have a road guide, I just read. I read everything I could get my hands on. And it just all made sense. There were so many different points of view about the nature of being and, eternity and destiny and life after death that, after just traveling through all these different points of view, I finally found my own place. And so what you're saying is absolutely true. And one would only hope that human consciousness, if it is going through this new rebirth, opening itself up again, that people will look to themselves,
It's as if people are saying, hey, wait a minute, we've given up the power. We want that back.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Aaron in the story, is one of those people. That's what's so interesting about it. I wanted to write a story that everybody could relate to, just regular people. I'm just a regular person, and I found these interesting pieces of information and put them together into my own personal belief system.
Sure.
But Aaron in the story is just a regular guy, just trying to make it. He's a self-made man. He has this concept of what success means, wear the right clothes, marry into the right family, get the right job. And then he hits a place in his life where this belief system, the social belief system, as it were, is not enough for him, and it, kind of falls apart. Not to be spoiler alert here, but he hits a bump in the road, and it makes him realize that there are other things going on around him that he can't see, and so he has to go within himself. Not for the same reasons that I did. I was actually researching religions and philosophy. He's forced to go within himself because of just, I wouldn't say it was an average, but a bad thing that happens to him, in the real world, what we understand as the real world. So,
when you were doing your research into religion, Doctor, was there anything that you came across that was an epiphany, that aha moment?
Yes, it was actually the text that I actually wrote my dissertation on. I based it on. We always have to have a primary text.
Yep.
And it was, the Hindu Bhagavad Gita. And just a little, backstory on the Bhagavad Gita. Allegedly, I don't have anything in front of me actually saying that it happened, but Gandhi kept a copy of it at his bedside. And Dr. Martin Luther King also read it and ascribed to it. That book, there is a relationship. It centers around a warrior, okay? I guess bigger than an average guy, in our day and time. But he is faced with a crisis of decision, a moral, ethical dilemma.
Right.
And he has a very close friend, a BFF, as it were, with him, advising him, almost like a mentor, and he doesn't realize it. Well, there's a chapter in the book where his mentor reveals himself to be, he's really an avatar. He's like the incarnation, of the Hindu version of God. And he's there in the chariot with Arjuna, the warrior, who is the protagonist. And my epiphany was that, wow, I'm just a regular guy, maybe like Arjuna in his time in this story. And what if I had a BFF like that, an avatar, an incarnation of God, if you want to say that, right there with me, helping me make my decisions? What if that were true? Wow. That means I'm not alone in the universe. That means someone is watching over me. That means I'm still in control of my destiny, but there's someone there to kind of help me navigate the waters. And, that book had a huge, huge influence on me. I actually read it before I decided to do my dissertation on it because it really changed my ideas about the way the universe works.
Why do you think, Doctor, there are so many different religions if we are all from one?
Oh, I'm not an anthropologist. I wish one of my old professors were here.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you a question from left field, but based on your research and your own personal beliefs.
Right. My own personal beliefs, I think geography has a lot to do with it. It's just as simple as that. We live in different parts of the world and different cultures.
Right.
And I just believe, humanity evolves according to the environment that it's placed in. And I think that's why these systems are different, but like I said before, we still come back to the same basic principles. If you ever talk to anybody, and I'm sure you have, that has taken maybe one course in comparative religion, they'll say the same thing. They're all supposed to be so different, but there's always one supreme being. There's always a concept of eternal soul. Yeah. So there has to be something to that core belief. Now, how people want to interpret it around the world, like I said, that's probably an anthropology professor, could answer that question better than I. But that's how I understand it. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that people who are interested in getting to the truth, will take that into consideration, that look at every option, as I said before, look at every viewpoint, and then come to your own conclusion, what's comfortable for you.
Do you believe in fate?
I do. I do. That is another good question. Because fate and destiny, there's like two huge philosophical arguments on predetermination. And I believe that, yes, we are in control of what happens to us. Now, these are my own personal beliefs, but that we determine our fate. I don't know if this makes sense, because then I'll have to get into the, probably a whole nother conversation. But let me just put it this way. Sure. I think this is the simplest way to put it. I believe in a soul. Mm-hmm. I believe that I believe in reincarnation. I believe we come back over and over again to get it right. To get to that Buddhist concept of enlightenment or nirvana, where we don't have to come back anymore. But I believe before we come back that there's some point out there before we live again that we plot our destinies ourselves. That's just the way I've just tried to kind of figure it out. That there's not any arbitrary body or committee out there saying, well, Royce is going to go through this and this and this and this. I believe that I am probably someplace out there in between lives, looking at what's gone before me, my past life, and figuring out where I need to go in the next life to get to that point where I don't have to come back again. And that's very Hindu. That's very Hindu, very Buddhist.
It's very Hindu. Yeah. It's very Buddhist. But I hear that echoed around the world when I speak to different guests that I've had the opportunity of having on the show over the years talking about reincarnation. It's universal.
Yeah.
Why do you think the Hindus had this knowledge way before we did?
That I really do not have an answer to that question. But I have a question for you. Why did those religions come first? You know, that's one thing that, and those religions that predated Christianity, you know, they have these elaborate god systems and mythologies. And then when Christianity came along, you know, which is another conversation, you just decided, well, we're cutting away all the levels of gods and we're going to go to one. We're changing our system.
Well, when we look at Greek mythology, it, you know, Christianity mirrors Greek mythology, except instead of having all the different gods of the pantheon, they only have one god, one son. In fact, the way I see it, Zeus is God, Hercules is Jesus, because Hercules was born of a mortal mother and a deity father. So was Jesus. Yeah. Both descend from the sky. Both deities, Zeus and and God, live a high. Except Zeus lives on Mount Olympus and God lives in heaven. So and then when you look at the religion or the way that King Akhenaten in Egypt brought the one God, the raw God, in, you see so many similarities. It seems that at one time these myths, these different religions or mythologies just went to the singular instead of the plural. Maybe it was easier to understand. I don't know, but I find it very interesting that all of these ancient religions and philosophies followed each other.
Yeah, they do. And you've raised some very good points, because as you were talking about that, I was thinking, when you mentioned Hercules as Zeus' son, and I was thinking, yes, he was a demigod. He was part, which is just, another kind of level of gods. And then you brought up, the Egyptians and how, yes, they finally got around, or that one particular pharaoh got around to the concept of one god. Why it always goes back to one. But even the Hindus, they start with Brahma, which is like Brahman. Let me just change that, which is like the plural of all these other gods and lower tiers below him. But he encompasses all of them. And so I understand your question about why did we get from the one to the many and from the many back to one. Perhaps, and this is just a guess, that people living in those times, those civilizations, needed to explain different things away, different things that was happening in life, and they needed to have a deity to help explain, or they needed a deity to be able to control different parts of life. That's just a guess. Well, on my part.
I agree with you. I agree with you full-heartedly. And another thing that I've noticed is that we on this planet are a binary race. And what I mean by that is, if you take binary code 0 and 1, without the 0 and 1, you cannot have a binary code. So you've got 0, 1, and then look at us humans, male, female, up, down, in, out, right, left. It seems that there is more to this than we have been told. Or is it that we don't have the answers yet? So many people believe in conspiracies, cover-ups, whether it's the government or the Vatican. And I kind of shake my head saying, well, you know what? Maybe the answer is because we don't know. It's that simple. Things go right in your life, you thank God. Things go wrong in your life, you blame the devil. Why not take responsibility and say, hey, you know what? I screwed up. Or, you know what? I did pretty damn good.
Yeah, we don't know. And as Aaron, and myself, things are turning point. Something needs to happen. There needs to be a catalyst.
Right. And
I'm not going to sit here and say this needs to happen in everybody's life. This is just what happened in mine and what happened in my characters. something needs to happen to get you to a point where you start questioning the world around you and the system that you're just locked into. Yeah. And you need another way. You don't know what that way is. Because I remember when it hit me, out of the blue sky, and I won't go into those details.
Sure.
The one phrase I kept repeating to myself over and over in my mind is like, I need to understand. I need to understand. And that's it. I didn't have anything at the end of that phrase. I need to understand. And I kept saying that over and over again, and I knew something was wrong. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I crossed paths with probably the only real mentor I ever had, but he had a most decisive effect on my life. We crossed paths coincidentally, and that's a poor choice of words, because I don't believe it was a coincidence. And he said, and this is a true story, he said, and he was a colleague of mine, we're going to take our lunch hour and go to the bookstore. And I said, okay, because he was also my boss. Let's go to the bookstore. Well, we had bookstores actually in malls. And he says, I got some interesting things I would like you to read. I think you might find them interesting. And we hadn't even known each other that long. He was literally my new boss of maybe several months. And he pulled 3 books down that kind of set me on my journey. There's a book called The Game of Life. I don't even know if it's in print anymore. Called The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. It's a small little book. It's not even 100 pages. He pulled that book off the shelf. And then he pulled Edgar Cayce. I'd never even heard of Edgar Cayce. He pulled Edgar Cayce on reincarnation off the shelf. And he said, read these 2. And I said, okay, didn't have a clue what was going on. But I read, and I'm going to do this because he's telling me to do this, and there may be a test at the end of the week. And so I read them, and the rest is history, Rob. I could take you through the rest of the things I ended up reading. But it just changed my life, and it was at a point way before my Ph.D. dissertation. It was just at that point where something's got to change, and I need to understand, not knowing really what I wanted to understand, but I knew that something had to change, and I needed to see the real picture.
All right, Dr. Murcherson, we have to take a commercial break. Please stand by. Nation, Dr. Royce Murcherson is our special guest. She is the author of a fascinating book. Please put this on your to-get list, Remembering Olympus. Her website is www.roycemurcherson.com, and that's RoyceMurcherson.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. The good doctor and I return on the other side of this short set of breaks as we continue live and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network. Don't go away.
In Victorian England, a famous theologian posed a perplexing riddle. Why are the 2 top personalities in the Bible tagged with the numbers 7 and 11? Academics agree the answer is found in the stunning discovery of a hitherto secret Bible structure explained in a new book called The Genesis Grid. The discovery is so simple that preschool children could illustrate it. Certain claims are hugely controversial and may offend some, but at the X Zone, we've studied this awesome new book and agree with one expert, and I quote, "These discoveries appear to be beyond coincidence." So who or what hid this wonderful pattern in the Bible, and what might they do next? Find out more, X Zone Nation, and read reviews on www.genesisgrid.co.uk. That's www.genesisgrid.co.uk.
Unwilling to be the government's deadly assassin, gifted psychic Kahara Mitchell went AWOL and ended up buried under rubble in the wake of a great tsunami. She regained consciousness far from Earth on the medical ship of a Daguerreonian intergalactic fleet. Has she been rescued or abducted by aliens? The Chalice of Carrie, Kahira O'Donnell's latest paranormal science fiction romance, is the passionate story of an Earth woman and her destined mates, twin kings from another galaxy. Kahira uses her gifts fighting alongside Lords Rom and Ra in a war that will determine the destiny of galaxies. The Chalice of Carrie by Kahira O'Donnell is now available at KahiraO'Donnell.com or at Amazon.com.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. The ability to access the knowledge of the universe is much easier for us to access than we may believe. Brad Johnson, conscious matrix communicator, is one of these unique individuals who is able to access a strong connection to the universal mind. Through his connection, Brad has assisted thousands of clients from all over the world through natural intuitive assistance. The intuitive information received is vast, covering a wide range of subjects. Brad's innate ability includes being able to access one's own universal matrix to help them realize their potential to create a life of profound greatness. One-on-one private sessions with Brad Johnson are available to anyone from around the world. Brad is also a proficiently trained psychic, Akashic Records reader, and online spiritual teacher, founder of his own unique and powerful healing system, Body Regeneration Healing, as well as a professional conscious channeler in communication with his own higher self-consciousness, known as Adronis. For more information or to book a service appointment with Brad Johnson, visit his website at www.consciousmatrix.com. That's www.consciousmatrix.com.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
My name is Michael Telstar, Canada's leading mentalist from Toronto, Ontario.
Hi, my name is Splenda, and you're listening to my dad, Rob McConnell, on the X-Zone.
This is Psychic Dorothy from St. Catharines, and you're listening to Rob McConnell.
Hello, my name is Holly Reeves, an astrologer from Astro For You, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X-Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to The X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Welcome back, everyone. Dr. Royce Murcherson is our special guest this hour. Her website is www.roycemurcherson.com. The name of her new book is entitled Remembering Olympus. How hard was it for you, Doctor, to complete your book? How did it start? Did you start at the end and go backwards, or did you, when you're planning your book, I mean not the actual writing of the book, but, you know, and what, in your opinion, was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part was just pulling, several different genres together, which that was one of the points Diane Donovan made, genre, you have mystery, you have romance, you have adventure. And most books are just confined to one of those: mystery, romance, spirituality, philosophy.
Sure.
And so the hardest hurdle for me to clear was to be able to pull all of these genres together in one story. But they were all necessary, because this is the kind of story that pulls, various religious and philosophical beliefs together in a way that just a normal, everyday person, every man, every woman can understand. And to get to these truths, not my truths, but religious and philosophical truths, to get to those truths, just as a person that maybe hasn't spent a lot of time reading, all of this academic stuff, you have to put it in a good story. And every good story's got some mystery in it, and every good story has to have an element of romance, in it. And because I wanted to bring in, a certain degree of spirituality and philosophy, I had to wrap that all together into one cohesive story. And so that was difficult, sort of, because I had to be very aware of, okay, if you have a mystery going here, Royce, you're going to have to follow the ABCs of how to write a mystery novel. And same thing with romance. So it was kind of a linear path.
Did you at any time have writer's block, and if so, how did you overcome it?
I did not have writer's block.
Wow.
This was a story I really didn't. It was something that was pushing its way out. Honestly, I sat down, and some writers, do these elaborate outlines, and they have these giant marker boards and little Post-its everywhere. I just did a simple, and I still do that. I'm working on another project now. Simple little bullet point outline, just a little roadmap from A to Z. This is where I'm going to go, and this is what I want to talk about. And I just sat down and I followed my little bullet points, and the story just came out. It just literally just poured out of me. And I never, ever was like at a point where I had to stop and figure out where I was going. I always knew where I was going. So this may be rare, a one-time event, I don't know, but that's the answer to your question.
What I've noticed over the years, Dr. Royce, is that when an author writes a fiction story, they're actually trying to get the reader to understand the message behind the fiction, that the fiction is based on fact, but in order to get the reader to better understand and have a better read, they include the romance. They include the different elements that you've done in your book. So what is your basic message behind the message? Or let me just, use phraseology from your own information. What is the message behind the curtain?
The message behind the curtain is that remembering Olympus is about being greater than we believe we are. And when we finally figure it out, the road we take is going to be just, fraught with choices that are going to be supremely important in how you spiritually evolve. And so I could also say that remembering Olympus is about transcending, because when you're walking along that road, and you'll notice that when you're reading the book, because that's the way the story kind of unfolds, you start to see that the choices that we make when we find out that we are perhaps greater beings than we are have everything to do with how we're going to end up at the end of that road. And it's not always a good thing, you know? Sometimes it's a bad thing. So not only is Remembering Olympus a story about transcendence and evolution and understanding your place in the universe, it's also a very real story about, well, what if you finally get there and you know who you are and what you are? Like when I ask myself, I want to understand. What if you're there? You understand. What are you going to do with it? That's the big question, I think.
How will we ever know when we are there? How do we know the journey is over?
I don't know that I don't have the answer. I don't know that we ever know that journey's over because I'm living this particular life right here, and I know my journey is not over.
Right.
But in this one life that I have I'm living, that I have conscious remembrance of, I look at the choices I make. I look at the events in my life. You know, if things just start to go south, I just simply look at the decisions I'm making, and I ask myself, well, what did I base that decision on? You know, what belief, what principle did I base it on? You'll know in your heart if it was the right thing or the wrong thing. It just comes down to that. What is the right thing to do? And if you're living your life and you see, even if bad things happen, but you're able to navigate those things, those rough waters, and you still end up in a place where you feel like, you know, to say, hey, I've been blessed. Hey, I've been lucky, whatever. And you ask yourself, well, why am I getting through all this stuff and I'm landing on my feet? Me, Royce, if you're asking Royce that question, I would say that I would feel like I'm kind of getting there. I'm figuring out, like the title of Shin's book, The Game of Life and How It's Played. You know, I'm almost there. I'm not quite there. I can't say that I am because I'm here living another life. But I must be doing something right, and I just need to keep on in that same vein.
You know, this life of ours is rather perplexing. The moment we are conceived is the moment we start to die. And the entire time that we're here in this biological unit called a body, we're here to learn. So, you know, if you take that into the bigger scope of things, I look at it that Mother Nature has been giving us tips since the beginning of time. You know, I look at our life as the caterpillar stage, and as we transcend from this life to the next, death is when we enter the cocoon. And on the other side, we come out as a butterfly to our next life and our next learning cycle. So many people think that this is it. So how do you tell people who are so A to B and that's it? There's no C, D, E, and F. That this is just part of something much greater.
Well, you can, if you're a part of the clergy, you know, you're in a pulpit, and you just tell your congregation, this is the way it is, and they either follow or they don't follow. If you're just a regular Joe like me, I'm just a college English teacher, you know, I would just choose to put it in a story that anybody walking along with the ability to read and write and pick the story up, read the story, and then figure out that there's other things, other possibilities out there, other things in life. So I don't see myself like as a preacher, you know, or this be-all, know-all person.
Right.
I'm just laying the options out there and putting it in a good story so that people hopefully will understand without being put off by something so foreign, you know, as, say, the reincarnation. You know, I mean, some people buy into it and some don't. Just depends on how you were brought up. Some people buy into the idea that, you know, there are worlds behind worlds and parallel universes and other things like in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we have Einstein to help us along there.
That's right. Our time is nearly up, Dr. Royce. First of all, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It has been a great pleasure and delight talking to you. I would like to wish you great success with remembering Olympus, but I don't think you need it, because I think that the way that you have structured your book and the way that I've had the opportunity of talking to you, your book is going to be a great success. What is the final message that you would like to leave the members of the X-Zone Nation around the world tonight with?
I just want everybody to ask yourself the same question that I asked myself. What do I need to understand?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to understand to change my life? How do I need to open my mind? What is it that needs to happen for me to see that there's more to me than meets the eye? And if you ask yourself those questions and you look at yourself as more than just a flesh and blood human being, then you'll get to the answers. So that's what I'd like to leave your listeners with, that particular thought.
The answers are there. You just have to ask the questions, right?
Just have to ask the questions. Absolutely.
Dr. Royce, thank you very much for joining us. A great pleasure, ma'am, and continued success.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's been all mine, ma'am. X-Zone Nation, for more information, please visit www.roycemurcherson.com. And the name of Dr. Royce's book is Remembering Olympus, and it's published by Kohler Books. Now, when we come back on the other side of the top of the hour, I'll be joined by Dan Silver. And Dan and I will be discussing what happened, or what we came away with, from the Alien Cosmic Expo that was in Brantford, Ontario last weekend. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Monday through Friday from 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here, live and around the world on the Starcom Radio Network. I'll be back on the other side of the short break. Don't go away.
In the world today, most people want what is called the American dream. They want love, a family, a fancy car, and a nice home in a nice neighborhood. They also want a good job and money to travel to interesting places. Life is great because they have the American dream. But what happens to this dream if they hear they have a devastating illness like lung cancer? The doctor may tell them they need treatment immediately or they will be dead in 6 months. He tells them you need surgery and then you need chemotherapy to get better. When they get home, they think of many unanswered questions. They ask themselves, will I survive when so many of my friends with cancer have died? How will I deal with the pain, hair loss, nausea and vomiting, sore mouth and other side effects of chemotherapy and pain of surgery? Will I be able to keep on working? What will happen to my family? Then they look at the internet and wonder, is there a better way to deal with lung cancer and return to my American dream? Carl Helvey can tell you yes, there is a better way. Carl Helvey is a registered nurse with a doctorate in public health and a 38-year lung cancer survivor. Carl was given 6 months to live when diagnosed, and he refused chemotherapy and surgery. Carl used alternative interventions. Those not only helped him overcome lung cancer, but also to remain cancer-free and healthy for over the past 36 years since recovery. In his book, You Can Beat Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions, Dr. Helvey will tell you his story of using all-natural treatments for lung cancer and continuing to work during his treatment. Free of pain and discomfort, Carl will also share how he remained cancer and disease-free since then without chronic illnesses or prescribed medications. His story is supplemented with chapters by Dr. Bernie Siegel, Dr. Francesco Contreras, and Dr. James Forsyth, alternative integrative physicians, and Dr. Kim Dalzell and Tanya Harder-Pierce, health professionals. All have successfully helped others overcome cancer. Research presented by the alternative physicians on their treatments for lung cancer demonstrate a significantly higher long-term survival rate for lung cancer clients than those obtained by conventional doctors. In addition, their clients were free of or had reduced side effects. You Can Beat Lung Cancer Using Alternative Integrative Interventions by Dr. Carl Helvey is now available at all major book outlets and at www.beatlungcancer.net. That's www.beatlungcancer.net. This information may help you return to the American dream. Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifeology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.